The dusty stagecoach rattled across the vast plains, its wooden wheels groaning beneath the weight of long miles and heavy stories. Inside sat a young woman whose hands trembled silently in her lap, a woman who had never imagined crossing a world so wide or so wild. Her name was Claire Sutton, and everything about her posture, straight back, stiff shoulders, and eyes fixed on the horizon, spoke not of bravery, but of the desperate attempt to hold herself together. She had left a city of shadows, a place where people took what they wanted, and bruises were left behind in places polite women were never supposed to speak of. She had run, not because she believed the West was safe, but because it was the only direction her fear couldn't follow. The stagecoach slowed, dust swirling in golden clouds, and she raised her eyes to see a town stretched before her in the fading light wooden buildings, a saloon with swinging doors, horses tied lazily to railings, men with guns on their hips and secrets in their eyes. The sign said Copper Bend, though the letters looked worn, as if the wind itself had tried to erase the past. She stepped down, feet touching ground that felt both foreign and final. She held a single small suitcase, marked by travel, and a piece of paper with an address she wasn't sure she believed belonged to anything real. She had been told a rancher here needed help, a lady, companion, the advertisement said, but she had heard enough stories to know what men really wanted when they claimed they needed company. She didn't believe in kindness anymore. Kindness was a story people told so that women would open doors and hearts. But when she saw him, leaning against the rail of the general store, arms crossed loosely over his chest, she felt a jolt of confusion, not fear. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing that hung unpretentiously on a broad frame, a wide hat shadowing eyes that watched the world with a quiet patience. He didn't look like a man eager to take or control. He looked like a man who had already lost something important. His presence seemed to earn space around him. Other men kept their distance not out of fear but respect. She recognized the name from her letter, Jesse Hawthorne, rancher, widower, a man whose land had outgrown his strength. He pushed away from the rail and walked toward her, not fast, not hungry, just steady. She braced herself anyway. Men walked slow when they wanted you to believe you were safe before they cornered you. Miss Sutton? He asked, voice deep but calm, the kind of voice that sounded like it belonged to firelight and stories told only once. She nodded, clutching the suitcase tighter. He studied her a moment, not with possession but with curiosity, like a horse studying a stranger before deciding if they meant harm. You look tired, he said, not judgment, just fact. Long trip, Claire swallowed. I've had longer, she replied. Tone too sharp, too defensive, betraying her nerves. He didn't flinch, didn't press. He simply nodded, then reached for her suitcase. She jerked it back instinctively, heart thudding. His hand dropped instantly and he stepped back, not angry, not insulted, just respectful. There's food at the ranch, he said. You can eat, rest, and figure things out tomorrow. She blinked. No orders, no demands, no assumptions. Just space. They rode out of town in silence, the horse's hooves kicking up soft dust that caught the fading sunlight. She looked at everything, the mountains in the distance, the fences stretching toward the horizon, the quiet sense of a world that didn't care who you were before you arrived. The ranch was large but not intimidating. A sprawling wooden house, a barn, cattle grazing lazily, chickens scattered like children at play. Jesse didn't rush her inside, didn't tell her what to do. He simply dismounted and let her choose her pace. Inside, the house was tidy in a way that didn't feel lonely but lived in. Kitchen's through there, he said. Bedroom is upstairs. Pick whichever one lets you sleep. She froze. You aren't expecting anything tonight? She asked quietly, voice trembling in spite of herself. His brow furrowed gently, not with anger but confusion. I don't need a servant, he said slowly, deliberately. And I don't need someone to obey me just because they're scared. He looked at her then, really looked as if reading every bruise she no longer carried. I need someone who wants to be here, not someone afraid of what happens if they leave. Claire didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did neither. Instead, she nodded and walked toward the stairs, though her knees shook with every step. She lay on the bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the whistle of wind through cracked wood. She didn't trust him, not yet. She didn't trust anyone. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel hunted. She felt uncertain but not endangered. There was a difference, though she had almost forgotten what it felt like. In the morning, she found Jesse in the yard, had tipped low, feeding a horse whose coat shone reddish in the early sun. He glanced up as she approached, offering a nod that wasn't warm but wasn't cold either. It was an acknowledgement, simple and earned. "We've got work," he said, "but only if you want to help. You're not owned here." She stared at him, disarmed by the lack of expectation. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. He brushed his hand down the horse's neck. "Company," he said simply. "Conversation when you feel like talking. Eyes on the land when I'm gone. A presence that means this place isn't empty." His voice softened, and maybe eventually, a reason to believe, "I didn't build all of this just to watch it die." She swallowed hard, because those words struck a chord she had tried to bury. "I don't know how to do any of that," she said. Jesse nodded. "Then we'll learn together." For weeks, life on the ranch unfolded like a slow, steady river. She helped with small tasks, learned routines, and found the silence comforting rather than threatening. Jesse never touched her without invitation, never asserted control, never used his voice as a weapon. He worked hard, sometimes too hard, and she caught him, staring at the horizon like a man who still believed someone might return. She never asked who. She didn't need to. Some wounds were self-evident, and though she didn't share her past, he never asked, not once. He didn't pry scars open. He waited for them to heal on their own. But as the first month passed, something unexpected happened. Claire began to laugh. It was small, soft, and frightened at first, like a bird testing its wings. Jesse froze when he heard it, eyes flicking toward her as if the sound itself was a miracle. And maybe it was. The summer heat settled over the ranch like a heavy blanket, making the air shimmer above the pasture, the cattle slow and irritable, and the days long in a way that felt both exhausting and strangely comforting. Claire had grown used to waking before sunrise, pulling on worn clothes, tying her hair back with whatever ribbon she could find, and stepping into a world where work didn't mean punishment, but purpose. She had learned to mend fences, feed animals, scrub saddles, and read the weather in the sky. Jesse watched her progress with an expression that wasn't pride exactly, but something gentler, admiration mixed with quiet surprise, as if he hadn't expected anyone to walk into his life and actually stay long enough to change it. He didn't hover, didn't instruct every move, didn't turn her mistakes into lectures. He let her fail, let her try again, and when she cursed under her breath because the rope tangled or the bucket spilled, he laughed softly, not at her, but at the stubborn universe that demanded so much from them both. But the thing that changed everything wasn't the work, or the routine, or the shared meals eaten at a wooden table, stained by years of use. It was the evening she found him sitting, alone in the barn, hands clasped, head bowed in a way that suggested not prayer, but absence. She had gone in to fetch a lantern, expecting the barn to be empty because she thought Jesse preferred solitude only when he chose it. But he wasn't choosing anything now. He was staring at the ground, shoulders tense, jaw tight, like someone who had held too much inside for too long. She paused at the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt or retreat, but something in her refused to walk away from the first man who had ever treated her with dignity. She stepped forward, boots crunching softly on the hay. "Are you all right?" she asked, voice steady though her heart wasn't. Jesse lifted his gaze slowly, and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not strength or patience or stoicism, but grief that refused to die. "Some days I'm fine," he said, voice low, rough. "Some days the past comes back like it knows the way, better than I do." She didn't move closer, didn't push for answers, but she didn't leave either. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but fragile, like a thread tight enough to snap. "She died right there," he said finally, nodding toward the barn door. My wife horse-bucked through her. Neck snapped before I could catch her breath in my hands. Claire's own breath caught at the brutal simplicity of it, not because tragedy was shocking. Life was full of tragedy, but because he spoke of it without bitterness, without self-pity, just truth. "I was working that day," he continued, "fixing a fence on the far ridge. I wasn't here. I wasn't there. I wasn't anywhere I should have been." Claire stepped forward, only one step, careful not to shatter the delicate confession. "You couldn't have stopped it," she whispered. "No one could." Jesse shook his head. "Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't change the fact that sometimes I wake up and feel like this whole Ranch is just a monument to failure. She wanted to say more, something wise, something comforting, but words felt useless against a wound carved that deep. So she did the only thing that felt honest. She sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, offering presence instead of platitudes. They sat in silence, dust creeping through the barn slats, dust motes floating like tiny ghosts, the world slowing to a heartbeat. She didn't touch him, didn't fold him into sympathy, didn't try to heal something she hadn't lived. But she said softly, "I'm sorry she's gone, and I'm sorry you've had to live with that alone." Jesse's throat worked, like emotion tried to climb its way out, but prison walls were too tall. "I got used to the quiet," he said. "Thought maybe it was safer. People leave. People die. But land stays," Claire nodded. "But land can't look you in the eye and tell you you're still worth something." He turned his head sharply toward her then, not angry, but startled because he didn't expect softness from someone who had learned to survive by hiding every soft part of herself. She didn't look away, not this time. And something in that moment, something small, something unspoken, shifted between them, like a gate swinging open after years rusted shut. Over the next weeks, their unspoken bond deepened in ways neither tried to define. They worked side by side, ate meals outside on warm nights, sat on the porch watching stars burn holes in the sky, drinking coffee gone cold because time stopped mattering, when silence became companionship instead of punishment. And somewhere in the slow rhythm of labor and quiet evenings, Jesse began to smile more, laugh more, speak more. He wasn't a man reborn, he was a man rediscovered. Claire, too, changed. She started trusting herself again, trusting steps, trusting breath, trusting the fact that not every pair of footsteps meant danger coming from behind. She learned to walk without shrinking, speak without apology, exist without fear that someone would punish her for simply being present. And yet, there were still nights when she woke sweating, heart pounding, convinced she heard her name spoken in a voice she had run from. She kept that darkness to herself. Jesse didn't ask. He waited, always waited. Then came the day everything changed. When a rider appeared at the edge of the property, dust billowing behind him, gun slung low, posture confident in a way that made the earth itself seem to step aside. Claire froze on the porch, breath trapped in her chest, because she knew that silhouette. She knew that hat, that swagger, that casual claim over any space he entered. She hadn't seen him in a year, but her body remembered before her mind did. Jesse stepped onto the porch behind her, eyes narrowing as he tracked the stranger's approach. He didn't reach for his gun, not yet. "He's someone you know?" Jesse asked. Claire's voice came out broken, barely sound. "Yes, and if he's here, it isn't for a friendly visit." Jesse's jaw tightened. "You don't have to face him alone." Her hands shook violently, old terror coiling around her spine. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He thinks he owns me." Jesse stepped in front of her then, not shielding her like property, but placing himself between her and the past like a man who finally had something to fight for. "Then he's about to learn something new," Jesse said, voice like thunder rolling low through the earth. "No one owns you here, not him, not anyone." Claire's heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with something fierce, something rising, something defiant, something like love.